There is a painful paradox many people carry in silence. The more he hurt you, the more you seem to love him. And that confuses you. It shames you. It makes you question your strength, your intelligence, even your sanity. But what if your reaction was not weakness? What if it was your nervous system trying to survive? When someone wounds us emotionally, especially someone we are attached to, the body does not interpret it simply as pain. It often interprets it as danger. And when the attachment bond feels threatened, the survival response activates. Instead of pulling away, many people move closer, not because they enjoy suffering, but because closeness feels like safety. The child within you learned long ago that connection is survival. If love was inconsistent in your early life, sometimes warm, sometimes withdrawn, your nervous system adapted. You learned to work harder for love, to become more pleasing, more understanding, more forgiving. So when he hurt you and then offered even the smallest sign of affection afterward, your system flooded with relief. That relief is powerful. It creates a biochemical loop. The pain followed by comfort intensifies the bond. It is not love growing stronger. It is a cycle becoming deeper. Intermittent kindness is one of the strongest reinforcers of attachment. When love is unpredictable, you invest more energy trying to secure it. You tell yourself stories. He did mean it. He is just struggling. If I love him better, he will love me better. But beneath those thoughts is often a much older belief. If I am abandoned, I will not survive. So after he hurt you, your fear of losing him grew, and that fear disguised itself as love. You felt desperate to repair, to reconnect, to prove your loyalty. The attachment system does not distinguish between healthy and unhealthy bonds. It only seeks proximity. And here's the difficult truth. Sometimes you loved him more after he hurt you because you were trying to restore your own sense of worth. If he could choose you again after causing pain, it would mean you are still valuable, still wanted, still enough. This is not foolishness. It is the echo of earlier wounds. Many of us confuse intensity with intimacy. The dramatic reconciliations, the emotional highs after deep lows, they can feel like passion, but often they are nervous system swings between threat and relief. The body mistakes chaos for chemistry because chaos feels familiar. The deeper question is not why you loved him more. The deeper question is, what did loving him protect you from feeling? Perhaps it protected you from feeling alone. Perhaps it protected you from confronting the grief of unmet childhood needs. Perhaps it protected you from facing the truth that someone you chose was not capable of meeting you where you are. Loving him more was not about him, it was about your survival patterns. When we abandon ourselves to keep someone else, we call it devotion. But in reality, it is often self-protection. If you focus on fixing him, you do not have to feel your own pain. If you fight for the relationship, you do not have to face the emptiness underneath. Healing begins not by judging yourself for loving too much, but by understanding what that love was trying to do for you. Your attachment was intelligent. It developed in response to real emotional needs. But survival strategies that once protected you can later imprison you. Real love does not require you to shrink. It does not deepen after harm. It clarifies. When someone hurts you consistently, love does not need to grow stronger. Boundaries need to grow stronger. Awareness needs to grow stronger. The moment you begin to see that your increased love after pain was actually fear, something shifts. Compassion for yourself emerges. You stop asking, what is wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? That question changes everything, because when you understand that your nervous system was seeking safety, you can begin to offer that safety to yourself. You can learn that connection does not have to be earned through suffering. You can teach your body that steadiness is not boring. It is secure. And slowly the pattern loosens. You realize that loving someone who hurts you is not a measure of your depth. Walking away from what harms you is. The most powerful shift happens when you no longer try to win back the person who wounded you, but instead turn toward the part of you that accepted the wound. That is where healing lies. You did not love him more because he deserved it. You loved him more because a part of you was afraid. And when you bring compassion to that fear, not shame, not judgment, you begin to break the cycle. That is not weakness. That is awareness. And awareness is where freedom begins. Trauma bonding is one of the most misunderstood emotional experiences in intimate relationships. From the outside, it can look irrational. Why would someone feel more attached to the very person who caused them pain? Why would hurt deepen longing instead of extinguishing it? Yet inside the nervous system, the answer is not irrational at all. It is biological, psychological, and deeply human. When someone you are emotionally attached to becomes the source of distress, your body does not simply register, I am hurt. It registers threat. And when threat is perceived within an attachment bond, the survival system activates. For human beings, attachment has always meant safety. As infants, our survival depended entirely on closeness. If connection was threatened, the body reacted with alarm. That ancient wiring does not disappear in adulthood. So when a partner withdraws affection, criticizes, betrays, or creates emotional instability, the nervous system moves into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. For many people, especially those with early relational wounds, the dominant response is to move closer, to repair, to please, to re-establish proximity at almost any cost. Not because the pain feels good, but because separation feels like annihilation. Pain within attachment activates stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. The body becomes hyper-alert. The mind obsesses. Sleep becomes disturbed. There is anxiety, rumination, and a desperate need for reassurance. And then, when the person who causes the pain suddenly offers warmth, apology, intimacy, or even a small gesture of kindness, the system shifts. Dopamine and oxytocin are released. Relief floods the body. The contrast between distress and comfort intensifies the experience of connection. This is the foundation of trauma bonding, the alternation between harm and relief. Intermittent reinforcement is one of the most powerful conditioning mechanisms known in psychology. When love is unpredictable, the brain works harder to secure it. The uncertainty heightens focus. The scarcity increases perceived value. The nervous system becomes hooked not only on the person, but on the cycle. The intensity after reconciliation can feel like deepened love. Tears, promises, passionate closeness, emotional vulnerability. It feels meaningful because it follows fear. But what's often being strengthened is not secure attachment. It is dependency rooted in survival activation. For individuals who grew up in environments where love was inconsistent, conditional, or entangled with stress, this pattern can feel familiar. If as a child you had to monitor a caregiver's mood, anticipate shifts, or work to regain affection after emotional withdrawal, your nervous system adapted to instability as normal. Chaos became intertwined with connection. Anxiety became intertwined with love. As adults, when a partner hurts you and then reconnects, the body recognizes the pattern. It feels like home. Not safe home, but familiar home. And familiarity is often mistaken for intimacy. Pain intensifies attachment because it triggers fear of loss. Fear magnifies focus. When something feels at risk, it appears more valuable. After being hurt, the possibility of abandonment looms larger. The mind may cling to positive memories, minimize red flags, or amplify the partner as good qualities. The attachment system narrows perception to one goal: restore closeness. This is why someone may say, after he hurt me, I just wanted him more. It is not masochism. It is the nervous system attempting to stabilize itself through reconnection. Another layer of trauma bonding involves self-worth. When someone who wounds you later chooses you again, apologizes, or shows affection, it can feel like validation. The injury created doubt: am I enough? Am I lovable? The reconciliation temporarily answers those fears. Yes, you are still wanted. Yes, you still matter. That relief can deepen emotional investment, but because the bond is built on cycles of rupture and repair without true safety, the attachment becomes charged with anxiety. There is hypervigilance, constant scanning for signs of withdrawal, a preoccupation with the partner's moods. Emotional highs feel euphoric, emotional lows feel catastrophic. The body can become addicted to this intensity, not because suffering is desired, but because the nervous system becomes accustomed to dramatic swings. Calm may feel unfamiliar or even boring. Stability may feel suspicious. Without realizing it, one may equate volatility with passion. Trauma bonding is strengthened when leaving feels more frightening than staying. The fear of being alone, the fear of confronting grief, the fear of facing unresolved childhood wounds. The relationship becomes a container not only for love, but for avoidance of deeper pain. Clinging to the bond protects against confronting emptiness. Yet beneath the attachment there is often exhaustion, a quiet awareness that something is not right, a sense of walking on emotional eggshells, a shrinking of self to maintain harmony. Trauma bonding thrives in the space where fear overrides self-protection. Understanding this dynamic is not about blame. It is about compassion. The attachment developed for a reason. It reflects early adaptations that once helped you survive. The nervous system learned that connection, even painful connection, was safer than isolation. Healing begins when awareness interrupts the cycle, when you recognize that intensity is not the same as intimacy, when you learn to tolerate the discomfort of space without rushing to repair what repeatedly harms you, when you begin to differentiate between love and activation. As the nervous system experiences consistent safety, Both internally and relationally, the grip of trauma bonding loosens. The body learns that steadiness is not abandonment, that respect does not require suffering, that love does not need to be earned through endurance. Pain can intensify attachment because it activates survival circuits designed to preserve connection at all costs. But true healing invites a different truth. Connection that requires self-betrayal is not safety. An attachment that deepens through harm is not love, but a nervous system asking to feel secure. Nervous system does not fall in love with inconsistency because it enjoys suffering. It becomes attached to intermittent love because unpredictability activates some of the most powerful survival and reward circuits in the human body. When affection is steady and reliable, the body relaxes. There is less adrenaline, less urgency, less obsessive thinking. Safety creates calm. But when love is unpredictable, warm one moment, distant the next, the nervous system cannot settle. It moves into alertness. It scans for cues. It becomes vigilant. And vigilance heightens emotional intensity. Intermittent love operates on a cycle of deprivation and reward. When connection is withdrawn, the attachment system perceives threat. Stress hormones rise, cortisol increases. The body feels anxious, restless, preoccupied. Thoughts circle around the person. What happened? What changed? What can be done to restore closeness? In that state, the brain becomes highly sensitized to any sign of reconnection. A message, a smile, a small apology, even a subtle shift in tone. When affection returns, dopamine is released in significant amounts because the reward follows uncertainty. The contrast between distress and relief amplifies the pleasure of reunion. Dopamine is not simply the chemical of pleasure, it is the chemical of pursuit. It drives motivation, craving, anticipation. The more unpredictable the reward, the stronger the dopamine spike when it arrives. This is the same mechanism that keeps people pulling the lever on slot machines. The uncertainty strengthens the hook. In relationships shaped by intermittent love, the partner becomes both the source of distress and the source of relief. The nervous system links the two together. The very person who creates anxiety also resolves it. That pairing deepens dependency. The body begins to associate longing with aliveness. The anxiety of not knowing becomes fused with desire. When affection is finally given, the relief feels intoxicating. It can feel like passion, like destiny, like profound connection. But beneath that intensity is a cycle of activation and soothing. For individuals who grew up with inconsistent caregiving, this pattern can feel familiar. If love in childhood was conditional, withdrawn unpredictably, or tied to performance, the nervous system adapted to instability as normal. A parent who is warm at times and distant at others teaches the body to stay alert, to monitor, to earn closeness. In adulthood, when a partner mirrors that inconsistency, the body recognizes the rhythm. It may feel painful, but it also feels known. The nervous system does not seek what is healthy. It seeks what is familiar. Familiarity creates a sense of orientation, even if it is chaotic. Intermittent love intensifies focus. The mind becomes preoccupied with securing the next moment of warmth. Personal needs may be minimized. Boundaries may soften. There is an unconscious belief that if one can just behave correctly, communicate perfectly, love deeply enough, the unpredictability will stabilize. But unpredictability itself becomes the glue. Each cycle of withdrawal increases anxiety. Each reconciliation increases relief. The emotional swing strengthens neural pathways associated with craving and reward. Over time, the relationship can begin to resemble an addiction pattern, not because love is toxic, but because the nervous system is cycling between threat and reward. The body adapts to this intensity. Calm may start to feel unfamiliar or even unsettling when someone consistent and emotionally available enters the picture. There may be a strange absence of chemistry. Without the spikes of anxiety and relief, the nervous system may interpret steadiness as lack of passion. This does not mean the person prefers chaos. It means the body has been conditioned to equate activation with attachment. The absence of drama can feel like emotional flatness because the system is no longer flooded with stress hormones followed by dopamine surges. Another layer of intermittent love involves self-worth. When affection is inconsistent, each moment of validation feels precious. Being chosen after distance feels like proof of value. The mind may think, if they came back, it means I matter. That belief strengthens the emotional bond. Yet the nervous system remains on edge. There is hypervigilance, a constant scanning for signs of withdrawal. Small changes in tone or behavior can trigger disproportionate fear. The body braces for loss even in moments of closeness. Over time, this chronic activation takes a toll. Sleep disturbances, digestive issues, mood swings, emotional exhaustion. The system is not designed to oscillate between threat and relief indefinitely. It is designed for secure attachment, where connection does not require survival mode. Breaking the addiction to intermittent love does not begin with forcing detachment. It begins with awareness, recognizing that the intensity is biochemical, understanding that craving does not always equal compatibility, seeing that the body has learned to chase relief rather than rest and safety. Healing involves retraining the nervous system to tolerate consistency, to sit with calm without interpreting it as emptiness, to experience connection without the dramatic highs and lows. This often feels uncomfortable at first because the body is withdrawing from adrenaline-driven bonding. With time and safe relational experiences, the system recalibrates. Dopamine is no longer tied to unpredictability. Oxytocin can flow in steady presence rather than dramatic reunion. The body learns that love does not need to be earned through anxiety. The addiction to intermittent love is not a character flaw. It is conditioning shaped by experience. It reflects a nervous system that learned to survive in uncertainty, but survival is not the same as security. And when the body begins to experience consistent, respectful connection, it discovers something quieter and deeper than intensity. It discovers peace. Childhood is the time when the nervous system learns what love feels like. Not what it is supposed to look like in theory, but what it feels like in the body. Warmth or tension. Safety or unpredictability, ease or hypervigilance. These early experiences do not stay in memory as stories alone. They become embedded as patterns, expectations, and reflexes. When a child grows up in an environment where affection is mixed with criticism, closeness is followed by withdrawal, or care is inconsistent, the developing brain does not separate hurt from connection. The two become intertwined. The same person who soothes is also the one who frightens. The same voice that comforts may also shame. In that atmosphere, the body adapts. A child cannot afford to disconnect from a caregiver. Attachment is survival. So if love comes with pain, the child does not conclude that the caregiver is unsafe. The child concludes that pain is part of love. The nervous system fuses the sensations together. Anxiety and longing begin to occupy the same space. If a parent is emotionally unavailable, the child may try harder to earn attention. If approval is conditional, the child may become hyper-attuned to moods, striving to prevent rejection. If affection disappears during moments of conflict, the child may experience panic and learn that closeness can vanish without warning. These adaptations are intelligent. They are creative strategies to preserve attachment, but they carry a cost. When hurt and connection are repeatedly paired, the body begins to recognize distress as a cue for bonding. Tension feels familiar. Emotional unpredictability feels engaging. Calm, consistent presence may feel foreign because it was not the dominant rhythm of early life. This confusion often shows up later in romantic relationships. A partner who is critical yet affectionate, distant yet magnetic, can evoke deep attraction, not because the treatment feels good, but because it feels known. The nervous system recognizes the pattern and interprets familiarity as chemistry. The body does not operate on logic. It operates on conditioning. If love once required walking on eggshells, then hyper-awareness may feel like intimacy. If affection followed emotional withdrawal, then reconciliation may feel intensely bonding. The cycle of rupture and repair becomes the template for closeness. For many, the wound begins with emotional misattunement, a caregiver who was physically present but emotionally distracted, a parent overwhelmed by their own pain, a household where feelings were minimized or dismissed. In such environments, the child learns that their emotional needs may not be consistently met. Yet, the longing for connection remains. When emotional pain is not acknowledged, the child may internalize it as personal inadequacy. Something must be wrong with me if love feels unstable. This belief can persist into adulthood. When a partner behaves hurtfully, the instinct may not be to question the partner as behavior, but to question oneself. Hurt becomes a signal to try harder. There are also homes where conflict and volatility dominate. Raised voices, silent treatments, unpredictable anger. In these settings, the nervous system is shaped by stress. Calm may rarely exist. The body becomes accustomed to adrenaline. As adults, relationships without intensity may feel dull, because the body equates arousal with engagement. Even subtle patterns can leave deep imprints. A parent who praises success but withdraws warmth during failure teaches the child that love must be earned. Later, when a partner alternates between admiration and disapproval, the pattern resonates. The effort to regain approval can feel like devotion. Children also learn about boundaries through experience. If boundaries were not respected, if emotional or physical space was invaded, the child may grow up without a clear sense of personal limits. Hurt may be tolerated because it was once unavoidable. Discomfort may be normalized because it was once constant. In this way, childhood wounds do not simply create vulnerability, they create recognition. The body recognizes the emotional tone of early life and gravitates toward it, even when it includes suffering. The pull is not conscious. It lives in sensation, in impulse, in subtle feelings of rightness. Confusing hurt with connection often involves a deep fear of abandonment. If early attachment felt fragile, the adult nervous system may cling tightly when intimacy is threatened. After conflict, instead of stepping back, there may be an urgent need to restore closeness. The fear of disconnection can overshadow the reality of harm. There is also grief beneath this confusion. Grief for the consistent nurturing that may not have been fully available. Grief for the unconditional acceptance that every child deserves. Without awareness, that grief can drive a search for repair in adult relationships. The hope that this time, the inconsistent love will finally become steady, but repetition does not create healing. It reinforces the imprint. Understanding that hurt became intertwined with connection is not about blaming caregivers. Many pairs were shaped by their own unresolved wounds. It is about recognizing how early experiences sculpted the nervous system, expectations. When awareness grows, something begins to shift. The adult self can observe the pull toward familiar pain without automatically acting on it. The body may still react, but curiosity can replace self-judgment. Instead of asking, why am I drawn to this, one can ask, what does this remind my nervous system of? Healing involves separating sensations that were once fused, learning that anxiety is not the same as intimacy, that intensity is not the same as depth, that love can exist without fear humming beneath it. As the nervous system encounters relationships grounded in respect, consistency, and emotional presence, new associations form. Safety becomes less foreign. Calm begins to feel trustworthy. The old confusion between hurt and connection slowly loosens. The child within did not choose to link pain with love. It was an adaptation to preserve belonging. And when that adaptation is met with compassion rather than shame, the path towards secure connection begins to unfold in ways that feel steady, spacious, and real. Abandonment fear is one of the most powerful forces shaping human attachment. It does not always announce itself loudly. Often it lives quietly beneath reactions, beneath urgency, beneath the intensity of longing that arises when connection feels threatened. When abandonment fear is activated, attachment does not weaken. It frequently intensifies. To understand this, we must begin with the biology of attachment. For a child, abandonment once meant death. Separation from a caregiver was not an inconvenience. It was a survival threat. The nervous system evolved to treat disconnection as danger. That wiring remains active in adulthood even when the stakes are no longer life or death. When someone we love pulls away, becomes emotionally distant, or threatens to leave, the body does not respond with calm logic. It responds with alarm. The attachment system activates immediately. Stress hormones rise. The heart rate shifts. Thoughts narrow. The mind becomes preoccupied with restoring closeness. This activation can feel like intensified love. The person suddenly seems more important, more valuable, more necessary. Flaws that were once visible fade into the background. Positive memories become amplified. The possibility of losing the relationship sharpens desire. Abandonment fear magnifies attachment because it triggers scarcity. What feels scarce feels precious. When connection appears at risk, the nervous system prioritizes securing it above almost everything else. Personal boundaries, self-respect, even physical well-being can become secondary to the drive for reconnection. For many individuals, this fear is not rooted only in the present relationship. It echoes earlier experiences. A caregiver who was inconsistent, a parent who was emotionally unavailable, a childhood marked by sudden separations, silent treatments, or unpredictable affection. In those environments, the young nervous system learned that connection could vanish without warning. The child adapts by becoming vigilant, monitoring tone, facial expressions, subtle shifts in mood, trying to prevent rupture before it happens, trying to earn stability through compliance, achievement, or caretaking. These strategies develop not out of weakness, but out of intelligence. They preserve attachment in uncertain conditions. As adults, when a partner shows signs of withdrawal, the old alarm system activates. The fear is not simply about losing this person. It is about re-experiencing the original helplessness. The body reacts as though history is repeating itself. This is why attachment can deepen after conflict. The moment distance appears, anxiety surges. The mind becomes consumed with questions. What did I do wrong? How can I fix this? What must I change to keep them close? The energy that might have been directed toward evaluating the relationship becomes redirected toward preserving it. Abandonment fear can create a powerful illusion. It can make the relationship feel irreplaceable, unique, destined. In reality, what often feels irreplaceable is the attachment bond itself. The fear of being alone amplifies the perceived significance of the partner. There's also a profound identity component. For some, being chosen by another validates existence. If early life involved emotional neglect or conditional love, being wanted becomes intertwined with self-worth. The threat of abandonment then feels like confirmation of unworthiness. Preventing that outcome becomes urgent. In this state, people may tolerate behavior that contradicts their values. They may minimize hurtful actions. They may overextend themselves in attempts to secure reassurance. The fear of separation overshadows the question of whether the connection is healthy. Abandonment fear can also distort perception. Small changes in communication may be interpreted as signs of impending loss. Neutral moments can feel charged with meaning. The nervous system scans constantly for evidence of rejection. Hypervigilance replaces ease. Yet beneath the urgency is often grief. Grief for unmet needs. Grief for the safety that was not consistently provided earlier in life. The adult relationship becomes a stage upon which old longing seeks resolution. If this person stays, perhaps the old wound will finally close. But attachment strengthened by fear is fragile. It depends on reassurance. It requires constant proof. It cannot fully rest because the nervous system remains alert to the possibility of loss. Understanding the role of abandonment fear requires compassion. The fear developed for a reason. It once protected connection in circumstances where connection was uncertain. It is not evidence of inadequacy. It is evidence of adaptation. Healing does not begin by forcing detachment or shaming the need for closeness. It begins by recognizing the fear when it arises, by noticing the tightening in the chest, the urgency in thought, the impulse to fix or pursue, by separating present reality from past imprint. As awareness grows, space appears between fear and action. The adult self can ask whether the relationship itself is nurturing rather than simply focusing on whether it is being preserved. The nervous system can gradually learn that temporary distance is not annihilation, that being alone does not equal being abandoned. With consistent experiences of reliability, whether through supportive relationships or therapeutic presence, the body recalibrates. Connection becomes less about survival and more about mutual choice. Closeness is desired but not clung to in panic. Abandonment fear deepens attachment because it activates ancient survival circuits. But when those circuits are understood and soothed rather than obeyed blindly, attachment can transform from fear-driven urgency into something steadier, something grounded not in scarcity, but in security. Self-abandonment rarely looks like self-betrayal in the beginning. It often appears noble, devoted, loyal. It wears the language of commitment and unconditional love. From the outside, it can look like strength. From the inside, it often feels like quiet erosion. Loyalty is a beautiful quality when it is rooted in mutual respect and shared values. But when loyalty requires the consistent dismissal of one's own needs, feelings, and boundaries, something more complicated is happening. What appears as devotion may actually be an old survival strategy resurfacing. Many people learned early in life that maintaining connection required self-suppression. If expressing anger led to withdrawal, if showing sadness led to dismissal, if asserting needs led to criticism, the child adapts. They become agreeable, attentive, self-sacrificing, not because they lack identity, but because attachment feels more important than authenticity. Over time, this adaptation hardens into identity. I am the understanding one. I am the strong one. I am the one who stays no matter what. These beliefs feel virtuous. They provide a sense of moral high ground. Yet beneath them often lives a fear of disconnection. In adult relationships, this pattern can manifest as enduring repeated hurt while framing it as commitment, making excuses for behavior that causes pain, minimizing one's own disappointment, explaining away broken promises. Loyalty becomes the justification for tolerating what contradicts inner truth. Self-abandonment does not usually happen in dramatic moments. It happens in small internal negotiations. The moment you feel hurt but say nothing, the moment you feel uncomfortable but override it, the moment you need reassurance but convince yourself you are asking for too much. Each time a subtle message is sent inward, your feelings are secondary. This pattern is often reinforced by cultural narratives, stories that glorify endurance, that praise those who stand by others no matter the cost, that equate leaving with failure. These narratives can mask the difference between healthy perseverance and self-erasure. At its core, self-abandonment disguised as loyalty is an attempt to secure belonging. If I stay, I will not be left. If I forgive again, I will prove my worth. If I tolerate this, the relationship will stabilize. The logic is not conscious manipulation. It is fear-driven preservation. The nervous system plays a significant role. When conflict arises, the attachment system activates. The prospect of rupture triggers anxiety. Instead of evaluating whether the situation is aligned with personal values, energy is directed toward restoring closeness. The urgency to reconnect overrides the impulse to protect oneself. There can also be a deep identification with being the rescuer, especially for those who grew up caring for emotionally unstable or unavailable caregivers. Being needed becomes intertwined with being valued. Staying loyal to someone whose struggles can feel like purpose. Leaving may feel like betrayal not only of them, but of one's own identity. Yet each act of self-abandonment accumulates. Resentment begins to build quietly. Fatigue settles in. The body carries tension. There may be a growing sense of invisibility, of not being fully seen. But because the role of the loyal one has been internalized, acknowledging dissatisfaction can feel like moral failure. Self-abandonment often includes rationalization, focusing on the partner as wounds rather than one's own pain. Explaining harmful behavior through empathy while dismissing personal impact. Compassion for others becomes easier than compassion for self. There is a difference between understanding someone's trauma and allowing it to repeatedly harm you. Loyalty does not require self-neglect. Commitment does not require silence in the face of disrespect. But when early attachment taught that love must be maintained at all costs, boundaries can feel like threats rather than protections. Over time, the disconnection from self becomes normalized. Intuition grows quieter. Emotional signals become muted. Decisions are made based on preserving the relationship rather than honoring internal truth. The cost is subtle but profound, a shrinking sense of aliveness. What makes this pattern difficult to recognize is that it often coexists with genuine care. The love may be real, the empathy may be deep, but love that consistently demands self-betrayal is not sustainable. It creates imbalance. One person bends, the other remains unchanged. The turning point usually begins with discomfort that can no longer be ignored. A realization that staying loyal has required abandoning parts of oneself. That endurance has replaced joy. That silence has replaced authenticity. Awareness does not immediately dissolve the pattern. Guilt may arise at the thought of asserting needs. Fear may surface at the possibility of conflict. The old belief whispers that speaking up will lead to loss. But each moment of self-honoring creates a new internal experience. Reclaiming oneself does not mean withdrawing love. It means including oneself within it. It means recognizing that loyalty to another cannot come at the expense of loyalty to self. That boundaries are not betrayals, they are acknowledgments of worth. As the nervous system learns that connection can survive honesty, that disagreement does not equal abandonment, the impulse toward self-erasure softens. The identity of the endlessly understanding one expands to include personal truth. Self-abandonment disguised as loyalty is not evidence of weakness. It is a learned strategy to protect attachment. But attachment that requires self-betrayal is fragile. When loyalty is no longer rooted in fear of loss but in mutual respect, something steadier begins to form. And in that steadiness, the self no longer needs to disappear. To keep someone close, healing does not begin with forcing yourself to detach or pretending you are unaffected. It begins with awareness, not intellectual awareness alone, but embodied awareness. The willingness to notice what happens inside you without immediately trying to fix it, justify it, or escape it. Awareness is the quiet turning toward your own experience, the tightening in your chest when someone raises their voice, the anxiety that rises when a message goes unanswered, the familiar urge to apologize even when you have done nothing wrong. These reactions are not random. They are signals shaped by history. When you begin to observe your patterns without judgment, something shifts. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, you begin asking what happened to me. That subtle change transforms shame into curiosity. Curiosity opens space, and space allows choice. Many relational wounds operate automatically. A comment triggers defensiveness. Distance triggers pursuit. Conflict triggers self-blame. Without awareness, these responses feel inevitable. With awareness, they become understandable. You start to see the threat connecting present reactions to earlier experiences. Awareness alone, however, is not enough. Insight without action can become another form of self-betrayal. This is where boundaries enter the healing process. Boundaries are not punishments. They are not walls designed to isolate. They are expressions of self-respect. They communicate what is acceptable and what is not. For those who grew up equating love with self-sacrifice, boundaries can feel unnatural. They may trigger guilt. They may awaken fear of rejection. But discomfort does not mean wrongdoing. When you set a boundary, you are teaching your nervous system that your needs matter, even if your voice shakes, even if the other person resists. Each act of boundary setting interrupts old survival patterns that prioritize detachment over authenticity. Boundaries begin internally before they are expressed externally. They start with recognizing your own limits, noticing when you feel drained, acknowledging when something feels misaligned, giving yourself permission to honor those signals rather than override them. There may be grief in this process. Grief for the times you silence yourself. Grief for relationships that cannot meet you where you are. Grief for the version of you who believed endurance was the only path to belonging. That grief is not regression. It is integration. Self-compassion becomes essential here. Without it, awareness can turn into harsh self-criticism. You may see your patterns and feel embarrassed. You may judge yourself for staying too long or tolerating too much. But self-judgment reinforces the very wounds you are trying to heal. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It is the recognition that your behaviors once served a purpose. They protected you. They preserved connection when you had limited power. When you approach your past with kindness, the nervous system softens. Defensive patterns relax because they are no longer being attacked. Practicing self-compassion may feel unfamiliar. If you were taught to prioritize others, turning care inward can feel selfish. Yet offering yourself the understanding you really extend to others restores balance. You begin to treat your own pain as worthy of attention. As awareness deepens and boundaries strengthen, relationships shift. Some may fall away, others may adjust. The people who benefit from your silence may resist your clarity. This resistance can test your resolve. Old fears may resurface. The impulse to retreat into compliance may feel strong. This is where healing becomes embodied practice rather than concept. Staying present with discomfort, breathing through the anxiety that arises when you say no, allowing someone else as disappointment without rushing to fix it. These moments retrain the nervous system. Over time, your body begins to register safety differently. Safety is no longer defined by avoiding conflict. It becomes defined by integrity. The alignment between what you feel and what you express creates internal stability. Self-compassion also allows room for imperfection. You will not set boundaries flawlessly every time. You may overcorrect. You may fall back into old habits. Healing is not linear, but each instance of returning to awareness strengthens trust in yourself. The most profound shift occurs when you realize that your worth is not contingent on being chosen, approved of, or needed. That realization does not arrive through affirmation alone. It grows through repeated experiences of honoring yourself. Healing through awareness, boundaries, and self-compassion transforms attachment from fear-based urgency into conscious choice. You no longer cling to avoid abandonment. You connect, because connection feels aligned. The nervous system, once shaped by unpredictability, begins to settle. Relationships become spaces of mutual respect rather than arenas of survival. You learn that love does not require self-erasure. That understanding yourself is not indulgence. It is responsibility. And as you continue turning toward your own experience with clarity and kindness, the patterns that once defined you loosen their grip, replaced by something steadier, something rooted in presence rather than fear, something that feels less like survival and more like wholeness.